Hi there, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplanty Goodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. And you might be able to see some of it around me and in front of me. It's tropical houseplants. Now today I want to talk about the plant that is in front of me, and it might be looking a bit janky at the moment, and I'll lift it up so you can see it a bit clearer and you can see how bushy it is at the bottom, and I'm trying to make it so that it's getting a bit fuller at the top as well. This lovely plant in front of me is the Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma. The other common name that you might see this by, unfortunately because it kind of harkens to the wrong species of plant, is the Monstera Minima. And you would understand why, because it looks a bit like a Monstera leaf and it does have the splits that you might expect from a Monstera leaf. But this is a very different plant. It's an entirely different species of plant. This is a Rhaphidophora, not a Monstera. But this is one for somebody who might be looking to add a plant in their collection that does like the look and feel of a Monstera, but they don't have the huge space. So thinking of smaller apartments. This is also a plant that will trail, or it will vine up things. So people that have been around at my channel for a long time will see the usual janky support sticks rather than putting things onto moss poles, because I am not made out of money and I also don't have the time to be creating moss poles all the time. So janky support sticks it is most of the time. But a different plant to the Monstera. It's still an aroid, it's still part of the Rhaphidophora family. So it is a plant that's relatively easy to take care of. So at the moment I have got it in a plastic pot, but this will also grow quite happily in a terracotta pot, in a net pot. Generally what you want is the water to be free flowing. It really does not like its roots being wet for very, very long at all. So something like a light, airy, aroid soil mix would be perfect for this, and I have got this on my channel on how I make my light, airy, aroid soil mix. This is one kind of continuing on the theme of the videos that I've been doing recently of slightly easier to find plants, and that is saying something, because a couple of years ago this was a plant that was very difficult to find. Since then there have been a lot of plants that have been created through tissue culture rather than propagation. There was a big discussion around that time when they came out in terms of how hardy the tissue culture ones are in relation to the ones that were just propagated via node cuttings and everything like that. I'm not entirely sure of which one I have, if I've got one of the original kind of standard propagation Rhaphidophora Tetraspermas, or whether or not this is one of the tissue culture ones, but regardless, they always grow quite well in my care. And also this is another plant that I've given to a friend who would kill most other plants, but they were able to keep this one alive, and it brings them a lot of joy, which is great. It's exactly what I want when I'm gifting somebody a plant. But the thing to remember about these plants specifically, especially when it comes to propagation, is that a lot of the times these plants start off as crawlers, so they will grow along the soil and then hit a tree and then climb up the tree, and then they will become plants that will grow upright against the tree, because essentially what you'll see is there's usually substantial aerial roots, and I'm trying to see if I can show you some of the aerial roots there. You might be able to see without me kind of bringing down all my other plants. You might see some aerial roots, and you might be able to see one there. If I bring, there we go. And it will get substantial aerial roots, and it will essentially attach itself to the trunk of a tree. This is another one that might be an interesting one to try climbing up a plank. And if you ever want to see a video about the difference between planks, janky support sticks, and moss poles, I do have a video on my channel, do check it out. But this is one that some people struggle with, and it is a very slow one to propagate. So you can cut a leaf, a node essentially with a leaf on it and maybe a bit of an aerial root, and put it in some water, put it in some sphagnum moss, put it in some perlite, put it in some leca, put it in pon, and it will grow roots relatively quickly actually. But it takes a while for it to re-establish and then start growing foliage and then start growing fully. The secret or the trick, and it's not really a secret, it's something that I think most people are becoming aware of now, because it starts off as a crawler. When you have got some decent roots, if you lay it on top of the soil instead of burying the stem with the roots in the soil, lay it on top of the soil and put the roots in the soil so the actual stem is at the top, that's when you will get it growing a bit faster. I'm not going to lie, even then it's still a relatively slow one to propagate, but it's still a very, very cool plant. You do get the fenestrations. It doesn't need an awful lot of humidity. And also, I'll tell you something now, this was started off as a propagation in my care. This was a couple of cuttings. It literally is 1, 2, 3 growing points, so 3 stems that I cut and propagated from my mother plant about a year ago, I think, and it's at this stage now, and it will probably get even bigger. It's stalled a couple of times because I keep moving it around. I've got so many of the Rhaphidophora around the house that trying to get them the right space and the right light it can be challenging at times. This is one that does appreciate, however, bright indirect light. I do fertilize this every 2nd or 3rd watering. It's in the airy soil mix, as I said before. Pest-wise, I haven't really had many pests on this. I've not had any spider mites, maybe some mealybugs on occasion, but that is pretty much all that I've had with this plant. And yeah, it just keeps on growing. Once it's established, especially if you're buying a plant from a plant store or a nursery, you don't have to worry about propagating it. But once it's established, just let it go and watch it grow, essentially. If you let it trail, the leaves will get a bit smaller and a bit more juvenile, and I'll bring it in again so you can see what some of the more juvenile leaves will look like. So they will either be fully solid, or they'll only have 1 fenestration and they'll be quite small, or you can give it something to grow up, and you can see on some of the more mature older leaves you'll get much larger leaves with fenestrations basically on them. But overall, a very easy plant, a very cool plant, maybe a bit more of an intermediate plant if you want to give it to somebody as a gift. So somebody who has had some experience with houseplants, not somebody who hasn't had any houseplants. This might be an interesting one during the festive season, during Christmas, birthdays or anything like that. This might be an interesting one to give to them, and then watch them be happy as it grows quite contently in most places that they'll put it, if it's getting enough of the right type of light. So that bright indirect light. Generally in the northern hemisphere it will be a west or an east facing window, not a north. It's not bright enough, and south might be a bit too bright, but east or west facing window will do really, really well. And yeah, just a bit of an awesome plant, really. I can't really say too much about it, and again, as I've said previously on my channel, if I don't have an awful lot to say about a plant, it gives you an indication that it might be a relatively easy plant and not particularly fussy. As I said, the only little idiosyncrasy on this one is the propagation and how you do that to do that right and to do it a bit faster, basically. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed. If you've got any questions and comments, do drop them down below. I'd love to have that conversation with you. And yeah, hopefully I shall see you here soon, and I hope that you have an amazing rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.